Today we start a 5-week series where our readings come from the book of Revelation. Now, Revelation is one of those books where it can be a bit intimidating to read. The stories are otherworldly, and they're not very practical. There isn't anything to grab onto like a healing story or directions about how a community should live. Instead, Revelation seems almost like a book of extended parables where we need to work hard to understand what it is that we need to draw from the story as meaning. And while we begin our series with chapter 4 in Revelation, N.T. Wright offers this to us. Chapter 4 is where the story really starts. This is where John is given the revelation that gives the book its title. Everything from this point on is part of the vision which is granted to him as he stands there in the heavenly throne room. Now, I don't know about you, but the concept of standing in the heavenly throne room terrifies me. It isn't the fact that we assume that the only time we would see that room would be after our death. That's not what bothers me. It's simply that I don't know how to be in that room. How does one act in the presence of God? Does one take off one's shoes because they're standing on holy ground? Does one prostrate themselves out, laying full face down? Do I need to avert my eyes from the glory of God, hide my face? What's the protocol for being in the heavenly throne room? There's just so much to think about how to be and what to do, that I get overwhelmed. With such a rich description of what John saw in his vision, and with the confusion in my mind as to how I should act in such a place, I struggle at times to understand some of the details that are in the reading. Questions that come to my mind are, why are there 24 thrones and not 12? Why 4 animals and not a great multitude? What do these things symbolize, and what are we to take from them? The Faithlife Study Bible offers this. The 24 elders may symbolize the 12 tribes of Israel and the 12 apostles, together representing the whole people of God. If true, this would fit with the context of Revelation chapter 2 and 3. Shared rulership for believers. However, there is another possible interpretation. Who knows? They might both have some truth to them. The 24 elders about the central throne of God fit the profile of those significant astronomic beings of antiquity, the astral deities known as decans. This from the social science commentary on the book of Revelation. These deities are far more ancient than the Hellenistic period. These deities derive from Egypt and Pharaohic times. As astral deities, the Decans exerted tremendous influence on the land below and on its inhabitants. So whether or not the 24 elders and their thrones represent the 12 tribes and the 12 apostles, or they represent celestial beings known as the Decans, we do know that the image of the elders and their thrones represents some form of influence and power and authority for us here on earth. Also, in reference to the 4 living creatures, like a lion, like a bull, like a human-faced being, and like a flying eagle. They could refer to the constellations along the celestial equator, a projection of the Earth's equator onto the vault of the sky, and located opposite each other. The best candidate for these 4 are the constellations that are now called Leo, Taurus, Scorpio, and Pegasus. However, again, there is another possible interpretation. The number 4 represents the entire created order. Thus, these creatures may represent all living things worshiping God. Pulling all of this together helps us see that this reading, this vision, isn't just about those in authority. It's about all of the created order, which means that this throne room of God's isn't just something that is for the powerful, for the elite, for the righteous, for those who are zealous in their adherence to God's law. The throne room of God is open to each of us. As we dove into the details of this reading and began to wonder what these images might mean, it's easy to overlook one of the simple details that's early in the reading. After the reception of the letters to the 7 churches, I looked, and there in heaven, a door stood open. Too often, I think, that we view heaven as a place that has a gate, and maybe even with St. Peter outside of it, guarding it. A place where people are granted or denied entry. But here, the door is already open. And I'd rather think that the throne room of God, think that heaven is a place that is open for us all. Open, even if the thought of going through that door terrifies us. Again, N.T. Wright offers us this. Heaven and earth, as I have often said, are not, in biblical theology, separated by a great gulf, as they are in much popular imagination. Heaven, God's sphere of reality, is right here, close beside us, intersecting with our ordinary reality. It is not so much like a door opening high up in the heaven far away. It is more like a door opening right in front of us, where we could only see this room, this field, this street. Suddenly, there is an opening leading us into a different world and an invitation to come up and see what's going on. As we continue through this pandemic, continue to find our way through what seems like never-ending changes to what we can and cannot do. We continue to question what is safe and what is not. In the midst of this time, we are offered this reading. And we are offered by God to come up and see what is going on in God's realm. What hope is God offering you through this open door? At the edge of heaven that is right next to you now, what hope is God offering to you? What fears do you need to overcome in order to stand now in God's glory, in God's presence? God offers this hope, this vision, not just to John, and not just in some metaphorical, esoteric way. God offers this directly to you and to me. So let us go through the door and find that hope. Amen.